out of the ordinary insights. Brought to you by Investec Specialist Bank.
With me today is Jay Ireland, who is the President and CEO of General Electric Africa. Is there still Afro-pessimism, Afro-skepticism at head office?
Good question. I would say there's Afro-optimism. I think there's an understanding of what the skeptics see, et cetera, and what the issues are. But I think overall, it's a positive view.
Where we are now is a celebration of Africa, what it's done. You mentioned a couple of years ago the issues that were being discussed at this World Economic Forum for Africa were different to what they are today. But I noticed that it's the slogan of the WEF is now sort of towards delivering on the promise. And I don't know whether people are sort of starting to become sceptical themselves. They can't really believe that Africa's doing what it's doing, and therefore the promise is there, but we've got to go to the next leg, if you like.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of continuing to look at the optimism and what the potential is, and then the ability to bring that potential to fruition. And a lot of that's going to be in the execution of a lot of projects across a lot of countries. And I think the other piece of it, which is another piece that gets overlooked, is the continued change in the political climates of the countries. And you have more and more elections and more consistency across doing business in these countries. That's going to attract more investment, have people get more confident. So I think that aspect of it is very important as well. So you have a combination of governance getting better, economics getting better, infrastructure getting better.
How important is politics? Because the country where you're domiciled at the moment has just gone through an election which, compared to the previous one, was very smooth, very successful.
It's very important. I mean, it's a mostly it's an impact on the confidence of people to invest, and it's when you look at the projects that we're involved in, and which is power generation, local railroads, et cetera, it's long-term investments. So people want to make sure they feel comfortable putting their money to work in these long-term projects, and I think the political aspect is very important. And so, if you know that from administration to administration, the consistency of the business rules are going to stay the same, that's very important. If every new government comes in, throws out the old, brings in a new, then it becomes very hard for people to invest basically past the next election. So, and as a result, that's a higher cost of financing, et cetera. So I think the political piece is a big piece. It doesn't really matter who's in power, it's how they handle that power. And I think we're seeing more and more, or better and better capability around that. You know, we've had the same thing in an election in Ghana. I think we had 12 elections last year, and we'll have a number this year as well. And I think as long as you have that consistency throughout, that's an important aspect.
Madagascar this year, that'll be an interesting one.
Yeah.
Going back to the skepticism angle, I was speaking to a gentleman who's just attended the Berkshire Hathaway annual general meeting, that pilgrimage to Omaha, and watched Mr. Munger and Mr. Buffett sit there and talk about their investments. And Africa came up, and they were very skeptical of Africa. They say it's a flash in the pan, it's too tiny, you can't predict what's going to go on, there's going to be political change, so we don't touch it. Now these gentlemen are 89 and 82, and old white boys from Omaha is one way that you could characterize them. Does that, I mean, apart from GE, do you think that the world still doesn't quite believe what's happening?
Well, I think everything that they say is somewhat true. But at the other hand, there's also mitigating aspects around everything that they say. And so I would look at it from a standpoint of understanding what the potential is here, understanding what the risks are. And it's different by country, it's different by business, it's different if you're doing project financing versus equity financing or investments or debt investments. So I think it all depends on how you approach things. So my view of it is, until you're here on the ground living it every day, you don't really understand it looking from afar. It's very hard to run a business here, flying in and flying out from Europe or the US or even India. You have to be on the ground living here to really understand the nuances. So as I look at what they said, from the standpoint of public markets, with equity markets, there's very little to invest here. They're not very deep. The capital markets have got to continue to increase in depth, and as a result, there'll be much more investment opportunity and appetite from outside the region. I also think that capital markets have to improve from a standpoint of debt availability. We saw, Rwanda put out a debt or a bond last week, or 2 weeks ago. It was 8 times oversubscribed. So there's a lot of demand, but I think we need to get that, and that'll then free up the ability to continue to invest in projects that will improve the infrastructure.
I think the Rwandan bond, Euro bond, $400 million Euro bond, which was oversubscribed, as you just said, is a great example to other countries and should pave the way for more. And I would have thought with the global scramble for yield, it's the perfect opportunity for well-run African countries to do the same.
Yep, and I think, putting back on the asset management hat, when you look in the ability of the investors to basically the liquidity of the market, being able to get in and get out, I think that's also part of it. So that's also a view. So the more countries that come out and do bonds like that and have a deeper and deeper capability will be much more positively viewed, I think, in the long run.
Let's keep our asset management hats on, because I was in that business as well, briefly. Is there a justification perhaps for a Pan-African stock exchange? Obviously the Johannesburg Stock Exchange is the biggest, but
Sure.
There's a few other regional hubs, but
Yeah.
maybe they should conglomerate.
Well, I think that's one of the issues that they all wrestle with. There's not enough depth or demand for 48 different stock markets in sub-Saharan Africa. So there are going to have to be some regional approaches to it to really get the capital inflows. I don't know what the right answer is. Everybody would like to be the hub of whatever it is, but that would be helpful, I think, as far as that approach. And I think the regional aspect is an important one, not just on the investing side, but also on the operating side. Again, we can't do 48 GEs in sub-Saharan Africa. We're going to have to pick our positions of where we can headquarter, where we can put people, where we can invest, and then hopefully be able to supply the rest of the countries as well.
Okay, let's pick. Which particular areas are you most optimistic about? You're based in Nairobi, you're here in Cape Town, and there must be other areas which
Sure.
you say, Africa is one thing, but there are different Africas, and a lot of the countries are more equal than others. So where do you like to be?
We like to be anywhere where there's, potential, obviously. But I would say that you've got to look at it in different ways. East Africa is, you have the East Africa community, which works pretty well. You've got now Tanzania has gas, but fundamentally those economies are not built on resources. They've been built up on a lot of other things. So we look at like Kenya, Ethiopia, et cetera, healthcare, power generation, those kind of things. We go to Angola, Nigeria, big oil and gas markets, Mozambique, a big potential gas market. Ghana, similar. So we'll see much more focus there around resources and how they manage the country. But again, you have the same ability about bringing power generation, healthcare, transportation, et cetera. I think there's going to be a lot of the regional impact in West Africa will be big. They've already got a gas pipeline that goes across the ECOWAS states. They've got a power lines as well, so it's somewhat of a power pool. So I think there's some potential there to work together as a region that'll be strong. Here in South Africa, I think we're seeing now a lot of growth, although relatively smaller populations in Botswana and Namibia, et cetera. But a continued growth as more and more there, some of its minerals, et cetera, that are contributing to the growth. So, we're pretty optimistic about pretty much everywhere. I think it's a question of we don't have enough resources to be across all of 48. So we sort of have to pick our bets, and the bets would be, do we feel that we can go in the government, good governance, transparency, we can do business there. We have the ability of moving people, resources. Obviously there's a growth potential. So all of those are factored into the equation.
You say you don't have the resources, but you probably would if head office said, we agree with Jay Ireland, we agree with his Afro-optimism, and therefore we're going to allocate more resources, because clearly after what you've said and the need for infrastructure on this continent, you could have a lucrative business for decades here.
Yeah, and I would say the head office has been very optimistic. I mean, I've doubled the employment. So it's a question of just getting it done. And it's attracting people, recruiting them, attracting them, retaining them. And so, you know, we've grown from 1,000 to 2,000. We'll probably go another 1,000 in the next 2 years. So the answer is yes, but there's only so fast that we can grow, because you want to maintain the quality of your leadership programs, your entry-level programs, how you bring people in, you train them. You know, if we just start bringing a lot of people in and throwing stuff at things, it's not going to be the right move either.
What are you going to get out of this conference, World Economic Forum for Africa 2013? You're getting your name out, you're on television now, and obviously that's important. But behind the scenes, in the corridors, what's going to happen?
I think the important thing is to continue to get an impact on the structure of how infrastructure deals, you know, happen. You know, are we getting consistency across countries, consistency even within a country around power purchase agreements? What's the best way to fast track projects and get them on? I think the biggest thing is, back to the demographics we talked about earlier, you know, we're fundamentally have about 80 gigawatts of power for 800 million people. 40 of that is here in South Africa for 40 million people. So, and every day the gigawatts don't keep up with the population. So we need to continue to bring power on as quickly as possible. We need to continue to improve the rail logistic infrastructure projects. So I think it's a combination of having speed to market, as well as continued smaller positive hits. Rather than doing the big, huge mega projects that take 6 years to develop, do things that are going to come on stream in the every year for the next 6, and do both. But it's a balance, and so hopefully we'll get something around that.
Just the last 30 seconds or so, Jay, on a personal note, are you having fun here?
Oh, absolutely. It can be fascinating, frustrating, a little bit of everything every day.
But you're here to stay. I mean, you're not going to cut your contract short, no?
No. I think the impact we can make, it's fun to be, you know, Africa is fundamentally a very young continent as far as from independence of most of these countries, so it's fun to see the development and have that happen and be part of it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.